All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It's me, your favorite Jackson, I hope. If not, that's okay. Joining me today is my host and co-host, Peter from Gonna Go For It. Welcome.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be.
And good night.
I hope it's less wet
Uh
than in the Netherlands. It's extremely wet where I am.
well, we are dealing with the aftermath of a mega storm with hurricane winds that we got last week, and lots of places in the Shreveport Bossier area still don't have power.
It's not
Even like
Oof.
it's not that bad
yeah.
here, but I don't have paved roads not going to my house and not surrounding my house. So yeah, there's another chore for me
Trade-offs.
to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
And we also have one of my editors, Nestlig, who's also joining us. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
So, it's been a bad week for scientific information. It's been a bad week for people who try to use their platforms to discuss um scientific information and get medically
bad
related info
bad
out
medical
there to the
information.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there've been some there's been a signal boost by a very very large channel
pun
that
intended.
boosted some.
Unintended. Since
Yes,
since
he got a
they
booster.
yeah, because since they were talking about booster shots and cell phones
Mm-hmm.
signal boost.
Yeah. And so I am happy to say that we will be addressing all that nonsense in an upcoming video. So be prepared for that. Um, but yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll see soon enough. So don't worry about it. Otherwise, yeah. People
Soon.
where I am, a lot of them are still out of power. I got power back pretty early on, fortunately. Uh, so happy about that. Plus, I can be here for all you guys. We love to see it, right?
And we can discuss silly people.
Very
Okay?
true. Yeah, today on the docket, we have first Jonathan Wells, who's going to be telling us how the evidence for Darwinism isn't really evidence or something, because it's always Darwinism. And then we've got, and then
Disowned
if we finish that, we've got Eric Hovind,
disowned Hovind.
Hovind the Lesser.
Hovind
Yeah,
yeah, I like that. I was going to say Hovind the younger, but the lesser is better.
Hovind the Lesser.
Yes, it's
Although actually he probably is friends with fewer you know who's than his father is. So, you know.
I recently hopped over to his channel and it did make me smile. He has about 10 times as much than I have on my channel, and he
Mhm.
gets about the same amount of views. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good. His
since
his
YouTube
subscribers
like deep.
his subscribers are probably the same kind that we get on Twitter.
Mhm. Yeah, YouTube kind of deep sixed his content, like his main and I think his like backup channels, and so he's struggling. He's been struggling a bit since that. So I don't know if he has any of his channels back, but yeah, he was like using what's his name, Matt Powell's channel to make content for a little bit there. So
What do you mean, Eric?
like when he, are you talking about Eric? Oh, I thought you were talking about Kent.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was talking
I
about
don't know anything
Eric.
about.
Eric
Oh, I'm
doesn't
sorry. I don't know anything about what Eric's been doing.
Eric doesn't
Um,
get a lot of views on.
he's not as and I hate to say it, he's not as personable.
No,
Kent is at least more like animated than Eric is.
Eric's
You
worst
know.
mistake was kicking out his co-host. That was fairly attractive.
Is that the British guy?
No, it was a fairly attractive woman who did videos with a
Hmm.
long time.
Okay.
I
I
was
think I remember like a British guy who did videos with him for a bit there, but maybe it was, I don't know.
that one came after he kicked her out. So I don't know
Oh, okay.
exactly what happened because I have been talking
Mhm.
to her on Facebook a little bit. But pretty
Mhm.
hard to find. I found her sister, asked her sister if she could get me, which she did. It was surprising because
Mhm.
that almost never happened.
Sure.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
then I invited her to come over for a chat, but she refused. And it seems that goings on why she's hey guys and going on in the background.
I don't know.
We haven't seen that before.
I don't know. There's
Yeah.
always shenanigans going on.
Especially
so,
on the
know.
Young Earth Creationist channels. But
Cough,
on
Greg
the
Luck,
upside,
cough, you know.
on the upside, Kent Hovind just had his Young Earth Creationist boot camp. And so the first boot camp was in a large hall with a lot of audience. Second boot camp was I think about it as playing in the forest with very few people coming over to watch it. And this one was entirely online with YouTubers instead of famous names in Young Earth Creationism. So I don't know what's going on with Kent, but apparently who wants to go there anymore.
Crazy. No one wants to go to his compound out there.
Yeah.
Huh? Very strange.
Maybe the controversies
How curious
around the compound would have something to do with that. I don't know. We don't know.
Too many controversies in the trailer park.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah. I actually I was thinking of Matt Powell. I was trying to see if he's posted anything of any interest at all recently, and he hasn't. He posts like randomly.
Were you expecting something else?
Well, I was expecting something like where he would talk about science, maybe like with the atheist came from rocks thing, but nothing. He hasn't really posted anything like that since then, and that was like months and months ago. It's mostly he's got one video which I have to smile every time I see it because it's something like my gender journey or something like that, and
has he gone on that bandwagon?
I don't know, but my mind immediately, thinks like my mind goes in the gutter first. I don't think.
Yeah, and if you go watch his earlier material on his channel, it highly romance thing going on there.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
hey, he was on a mission of self exploration. You never know.
Anyways,
I forgot also to say hello to Trudy Stubbs, who is there in our side chat watching right now. Welcome.
Trudy was first, and we also have Slam RN, Savage Cobra official per se.
Also, Icarus, yes, Slam RN, just me, Icarus. Trudy Stubbs. So it didn't go down. Yep. No one wants to. Oof. Yeah.
Whiskey or wine?
Whiskey or wine? Are you guys drinking? I'm not. I don't drink.
No, not now. But I prefer wine. I'm not drinking.
Just coffee. Okay.
Coffee.
We're not. This isn't a Dapper show. We're not doing shots for. For
2 a.m. I have coffee.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, hello guys. Welcome. Okay. So yeah.
Perhaps we shouldn't do this sober because it's bad for. It's You should be a bit drunk to get through these things, I think.
I think that's probably the best.
Yeah.
But yeah. Trudy Stubbs says, I didn't know Moonies could be creationists. Yeah, so Jonathan Wells is a Moonie. It's like it's a cult, isn't it? Basically, because they have like one guy who is kind of the head of it. Yeah. It's not like most, like, if you're like a Baptist or something where you're not following one person, right? You can go to any Baptist church. I mean, I'm sure there are like different denominations within baptism, but you know what I mean, right? There's not just one person who runs it, but for Moonies, there is. So.
I am Dutch, so I'm going to ask it. Moonies aren't the ones that will show you their butt cheek.
No.
Just saying. It would have spiced things up at least a little.
It definitely would have. But you know.
But
Wells
you know.
also, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wells is also an interesting character in that he is, according to him, he is intelligent design, not young Earth creationist. He's over at the Discovery Institute, and he has been for decades now. Icons of Evolution, which was one of his biggest books, came out in 2000. So he's been doing stuff over there for a while. But he posts, I swear, I've seen articles he posts where he argues that like speciation can't happen naturally, which like is a creationist position to take, but he's at the Discovery Institute, so I don't know how he squares that. Which, you know, when they say things like that, they're like,
are the most okay with speciation?
Well, yeah, Michael Behe
within
even
the kind.
Well, Michael Behe even is like, you know, universal common ancestry is what Michael Behe says in Oh, I hear weird noises.
From my end or from...
I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's gone now. So yeah, Michael Behe accepts universal common ancestry, or at least in name only. Yeah, Stephen Meyer is like good with a pretty large degree of common ancestry. And yeah, as you said, most creationists are totally fine with speciation. They even necessitate hyper rapid speciation in their flood models. So yeah, Wells kind of a strange guy, being out there like, nah, speciation doesn't happen. It's very weird. So maybe we'll talk about that in this video. I haven't watched it.
Is this a new video or?
Yeah, pretty new. They do like a podcast sort of thing over at the Discovery Institute now on their main channel. And so.
Ooh, neat.
So yeah, so Peter was gracious enough to get a picture. So we'll be watching like the face of Jonathan Wells instead of just the picture of the podcast or whatever.
It also, for people who don't know him, might be handy to be actually able to see him.
Do what? Oh yeah, to see him. Yes,
yeah. For people who don't know Jonathan Wells,
yep.
Because the original podcast just had
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like Peter's mic is overall good, but sometimes there's like static and a bit of silence.
Yeah, it kind of cuts out a little bit.
Yeah, cuts a bit. Yeah.
My mic is static.
I don't know why.
Measured Constraint says Moonies are part of the Unification Church, now out of South Korea, but I remember them as orange robes in an airport. Interesting. Okay. I'm not super familiar with all that. That was before my time. What'd you say, Nestle?
I was maybe wondering if Peter has echo cancellation on or not. Maybe that will help with the.
I do actually.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've got several filters.
I'm not sure.
On mic,
but I think it's fine mostly. It just sometimes it's just the sound goes down. I don't know why. It's. Yeah.
All right. So.
All right.
We ready?
Well, yeah. Let's jump in.
All right. Let's get to it.
We're taught in our public schools and universities that we all got here by evolution. This is an important theory. It's very prominent in our culture, and it's very important to know it, to understand it. So I'm going to take a critical look at evolution in these lectures. I'm not going to be defending biblical creation or even intelligent design except in passing. Instead, what I'm going to be presenting is a critical analysis of arguments and evidence for and against evolution. But my initial question, how did I get here, has a double meaning. The second part of the meaning is, how did I get here personally in my own thinking? I started out as an college undergraduate at Princeton University in 1960. I studied geology, which in those days was quite exciting. Those were the days when the theory of drifting continents was still controversial. It had been proposed many decades earlier, but many people doubted it. And Princeton geologists were among those who provided evidence that helped eventually to resolve the controversy. And I was right there in the thick of it. Although I was aware of the controversy over drifting continents, I was not aware of any controversy over evolution. As far as I knew, all my professors believed it, and I never questioned it. Although I did well in my courses at Princeton, I dropped out in my third year to find myself, as we used to say in those days. Well, I did find myself actually eligible for the draft. So I was drafted into the U.S. Army, where I did 2 years of active duty. During that time that I was in the Army, the Vietnam War had escalated, and I had become personally opposed to it. So when I was separated in 1966, the University of California at Berkeley was a hotbed of anti-Vietnam War sentiment. And so I transferred there. I wanted to finish up my undergraduate degree, and I studied physics and biology. I was an opponent of the war, but I was a nonviolent opponent. I was actually a follower of the ideas of Gandhi. Well, the Army called me back up in 1967 to serve on reserve duty. And as an opponent of the war and a believer in nonviolent resistance, I refused. I ended up being arrested, put in prison, where I eventually spent a year and a half. When I got out in 1969, Berkeley was abuzz with controversy over what was called People's Park. Some activists
I hate to say it, but that's actually kind of based.
Some land owned by the university and declared it to be
I give
People's
credit where
Park.
credit is due.
Things got quite violent. The violence of the leftist activists actually turned me off. Repelled by them, when I left Berkeley, I went to the mountains and literally built a cabin in the mountains of Northern California. While I was there, I was impressed by what was around me, the plants, the animals. I had never questioned evolution. I had never questioned that all
literally
this
a look
had
at the
happened
trees
basically
argument
by accident. But now I found myself questioning that. I just couldn't believe that all these plants and
I
animals
look at the trees
were
and
there
now I
by
question
accident.
everything.
No,
I
he's
started
literally saying that.
meditating
He's
and
literally
praying
saying,
Yeah,
look at the
and reading
trees. He's just saying, look at the trees. He's literally just said, wow, the plants are neat. So evolution a lie, maybe? Like, oh my God, really?
I can attest, Jackson. It's what you notice if you move into a cabin in the forest. You see a lot of trees.
I bet you do, especially when you build your own cabin.
Yes. You see even more trees.
He's like, I lived in a cave for the next 7 years.
Just a lumberjack and
It's quite the introduction, though.
just going out,
No, not lumberjack, lumber Jonathan.
Yeah, I went.
exactly.
I went to a
I
school
was
and my
trying to make a
professors.
joke, but you beat me to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I went to a school and my professors believed evolution, so I dropped out. That's a good way to start a video like this.
Well, when he said I was there for 3 years and I dropped out, like, well, you know, I kind of get it now. I kind of get his position.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound mean, but you know.
And he didn't notice the
anyway,
Vietnam War before he dropped out. Because he only noticed
Again, that kind of explains something.
Never mind.
He's like just steps off the campus. Whoa, what's this Vietnam War nonsense everyone's talking about?
There's other people out there doing things? I did not know.
He'd been in his dorm room for the whole 3 years. Hence why he was forced to drop out.
Yeah. Okay.
It was just the first semester, like for 3 years on repeat. All right. Anyway, we can keep going.
The Bible, became interested in religion and the idea that these things were created by design. I ended up studying theology in New York, but I was still interested in evolution. So I would spend several days a week at the Columbia University Biology Library reading about evolution and especially DNA mutations. I went on to earn a PhD at Yale in 1978, but I was still interested in both theology and science. So although I studied classical Christian theology at Yale, I did my PhD research on the 19th century Darwinian controversies. In particular, I did research on Princeton theologian Charles Hodge, who was a critic of Darwinism. He objected that it was not based on sufficient evidence, but he also criticized it on theological grounds, not because of the age of the earth, but because Darwin's theory excluded design. For Hodge, that was tantamount to atheism.
Pause. Okay, so for reference, I Okay, he said he did his PhD on this person. His degree's in cell biology, from what I remember. So
he said his
it's very
PhD was in theology. What he said.
I swear his PhD is in cell biology. I swear I've read that. I'm pretty sure. Hold on, let me look it up.
I can check.
Okay, yeah, because I'm also going to check Jonathan Wells.
He gained a PhD in religious studies at Yale University in 1986.
Is it? So it's then who am I thinking of? Maybe not. Okay, so he's not PhD in religious studies. Yeah. No. Okay. Also PhD in molecular and cell biology in '94. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. All right. So okay. Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure he has a degree in cell biology, which he does. Okay.
He's now a bit further. He's now a bit further back in his life, so he only recently went to cell
Gotcha.
biology.
Okay. All right, we can keep going.
Yeah,
and keep in mind you have to fill the time of the podcast.
That's true.
We might not be there yet.
So I finished at Yale in 1985 with a PhD in theology, but I still felt the need to learn more about the evolution controversies. I wanted to learn the biological aspects.
Not really a controversy.
So in 1988, I applied for several PhD programs in biology. I was turned down the first year, but in 1989 tried again and was accepted to several schools, and I chose to go back to Berkeley for a PhD in biology. My admissions essay stated that I was skeptical that DNA contains a program for embryo development. Turned out that several professors at Berkeley agreed, and this no doubt helped me get in. So I was skeptical of the mutation selection mechanism for evolution.
Wait, what?
Well, I missed the last part about what his professor agreed on.
He said, okay, so he said he was skeptical that DNA contained the information for embryogenesis contained the program for embryogenesis, and then his professors agreed, which is also Joel Duff. Hodge is a Reformed theologian and would have been critiquing Darwin very soon after the publication of his book. He is pushing back a bit against Warfield, who is less skeptical. Didn't know that. Also, I didn't realize you don't have a wrench. Boop, there you go, Joel. All right. Okay.
Also, I'm also a bit sympathetic to the view that like DNA is not everything in the cell. So embryological development it probably also includes many other
yes.
as well.
Sure, because you have the processes where you make like a gradient of like retinoic acid or something like that, and then that causes a somite to form at a particular place or something like that. Which I mean, I get that's true, but like he said it in a very weird way, if that's what he's referring to.
No,
if that's what he means, then I don't like that description. How is being critical of Evo Devo being critical of neutral and near neutral theory? I don't think he said that. No, I think he was saying. I don't think he said that. I think he said he was critical of he said of DNA containing the program for embryogenesis, and his professors agreed, so that's why he got in. Which, that's all very weird to me, and I'm pressing X to doubt, but whatever, it's his story.
Okay, can we go back a few seconds to?
Can we go back like 20 seconds, Peter?
Yeah. Just in case.
Let me.
Creation Today show. Well.
Shit!
I think that's
wrong video. Wrong video.
That DNA contains a program for embryo development. Turned out that several professors at Berkeley agreed, and this no doubt helped me get in. So I was skeptical of the mutation selection mechanism for evolution, but I took for granted that all living things are related through common descent. Once I saw the evidence, though, especially in embryology, my specialty, I began to doubt the doctrine of common descent. While I was at Berkeley, I also read a book published in 1991 by law professor.
Hold on. He said he saw the evidence and he doubted evolution? So I guess he means he saw that the alleged evidence for common ancestry is not good, in fact. I guess.
Maybe like he has I think again, just to give him some benefit of the doubt, I think he meant to say that he has already unconditionally accepted common descent, but then when he first learned what the evidence behind it is, he found the evidence unconvincing, perhaps. So maybe that is what he meant, yeah.
Whoops, my thing
So
jumped out. Okay, weird. Okay.
Yeah, of course, we need to know exactly for what reasons he, what are the specific reasons he has to doubt.
Well, maybe he'll get to it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anyway, we can keep going.
Sir Philip Johnson, Darwin on Trial, which had a profound effect on me. I became skeptical of every aspect of evolutionary theory. So I entered Berkeley skeptical of the mechanism, but not the pattern. And I left Berkeley skeptical of the whole thing. After I received my PhD in biology from Berkeley, I continued doing postdoctoral research there and published some articles critical of some of the evidence used by textbooks to promote evolution, including drawings of vertebrate embryos and photos of peppered moths resting on tree trunks.
Oh, no.
In fact,
Okay,
in
so
this
when
series
he
of
says,
lectures,
pause. So when he says he published articles, what he means is in the Discovery Institute. He does not mean he published any technical literature on these, though there have been people who've done that. He did not do that. He did it in the Discovery Institute. Also, Vandalia for 1998, can we know which professor agreed with him? No idea. He doesn't say. Again, I'm like pressing X to doubt on this whole story, but whatever. It's his story.
Also, I forgot to
since
mention.
I heard some good Wells critique. Yeah, we're here. We're here to do it. Wells. Well, it was only because we're only doing Wells because like it was the most recent thing that looked interesting on the Discovery Institute website. It wasn't. I didn't just pick him because I thought it'd be fun. I was just like, oh, that looks neat. You know, that's the most recent thing that catches my interest. But well, I forgot what I was saying now. The peppered moth, the peppered moth thing also. So with that, if I remember correctly,
That's his old argument. Yeah, his old argument.
Yeah, he misread an article that Jerry Coyne had put out because he copied an argument from Jerry Coyne, but Coyne's article was based on a misreading of the Michael Majerus, the old Michael Majerus stuff. And so because Coyne misread it, that got passed along to Wells, and Wells was like, aha, so this means the peppered moth experiment is out. So basically what had happened was Michael Majerus, who was a population geneticist, redid the old Kettlewell experiment of the peppered moths in like, was it the 1940s or something like that? Way back. And there were some there are some, understandable, there are methodological flaws with the original experiment. And Majerus pointed this out. He wrote a book on it. Then a bunch of creationists jumped on that book and were like, aha, see, the experiment is bad. The thing is, though, Majerus got really mad about creationists misrepresenting his work. So Majerus redid the original peppered moth experiment by Kettlewell and found the exact same results, which is that birds were picking off the white moths under the new Industrial Revolution regime where there's, ash and soot all over the trees. That was fine. The same results were acquired, decades later by a new experimenter. And it turns out there are actually over 100 examples now of like industrial melanism, which is what the peppered moth had. And we even know the genes involved in the peppered moth instance. So it was a transposon, which jumped into, it was either the pigment gene, itself, or it was like an enhancer or something like that for the pigment gene. And so this transposon jumps in there and causes it to overproduce the melanin, which is what made the moths dark. And we even know when that approximately occurred. It was around the year 1820. So we have the exact genetic mechanism that occurred, when it happened, and how this mutation was propagated through the population via natural selection. So the peppered moth case is, for all intents and purposes, pretty much closed. Also, Vandalia for 499 says Berkeley has a crap evolution program. If he learned all that from him, if he was even paying attention, like I said, I don't buy his story. I think it's nonsense. I'm sure he's fluffing the details for a bit, or fluffing the details a bit. Joel Duff says, yeah, the original experiment was rather simple, but understandable given the times. We now know a lot more, I guess, genetics now, which is supportive of the general thesis. Yeah, exactly. So even though Majerus saw some flaws with the Kettlewell experiment, that doesn't mean the actual experiment itself had a flawed conclusion. The conclusion was correct. Also, Savage Cobra official per se for $5. He must have had the same Berkeley professor Hope keeps running into. Possibly, maybe.
The same one who keeps clapping every time he finishes a sentence.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, or the docent who
And
was
then
like,
everyone clapped, including the professor.
we date the rocks by the fossils, and then he turns around, we date the fossils by the rocks. Hold on, you just said that. Oh my gosh, you're right. I guess I'm a Christian now. Like, oh, come on. Come on. Get out of here with that. Anyway, this is all very suspect.
Before I forget,
Okay.
there was something you said earlier about how evolution is very prevalent in culture. I say yes, but for the not for a good reason, because what is the most common pop culture references in
Pokemon
regarding evolution? Pokemon,
Yeah.
and X-Men, from Marvel. Yeah, it's
right.
It's not a good representation,
Correct.
to say the least. But
yeah, we need more stuff like Prehistoric Planet. We need more stuff like that.
Yes.
That sort of
exactly.
Or like, Walking with Dinosaurs, Walking with Beasts, that sort of stuff. We need that sort of representation of evolution, not X-Men. Not that they're bad movies.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
They're not
I
great.
Still enjoy,
but,
I still enjoy those, but yeah, it's inaccurate, but still, yeah, it's of course comic books. I know. Yeah.
Joel Duff says, I think Yex don't really talk about the peppered moths much anymore because they have gotten fully on board with the microevolution train, and so they think this is adaptation within kinds now. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's total flip, right? From back in like the 80s and stuff when he was first making this argument. Now they're like, oh yeah, microevolution's fine. In fact, it's our thing. We came up with microevolution. Yeah. Okay.
It's still a moth.
It's still a moth. Yep. Yep, exactly right. All right.
Well,
keep going.
If Joel Duff says Yex don't really talk about it, someone should tell Hovind, Angelo.
Yeah, every so often you see someone who won't even
Brain?
like allow microevolution. What'd you say?
I said brain, but it's the same thing.
Brain?
Yeah, they won't brain.
Yeah, they won't brain. Yeah, every so often you'll get someone who's like any microevolution at all is bad, but yeah, like that's a more or less impossible position to keep nowadays.
Didn't you had a discussion with someone like that a long time ago? I don't know what her name was.
I don't remember. I don't know. If you can, I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people. If you can remind me who it was, maybe. I don't remember offhand.
All right.
If you find it, yeah, okay, we can keep going.
Go into more details of many of the arguments and evidence for and against evolution. On some topics, I'll give 2 lectures. The first will be a summary of the arguments and evidence for evolution, and the second will focus more on arguments and evidence against it. But first, in my next lecture, I'd like to clarify what the word evolution means.
In his second lecture, Dr. Wells explores various ways the word evolution is used and abused.
What is evolution? Well, it can mean a lot of things. In its most general sense, it's just change over time. It can mean the history of the cosmos. It can mean the development of technology. In all of these senses, evolution is utterly uncontroversial. At least I don't know anyone who thinks that things never change. Another meaning for evolution in biology is that living things were once different from what we see around us now. The past is different from the present. This is called a change in the biosphere, the makeup of the living things on our planet. And there is a history to life. Nobody denies it that I know. Something else evolution can mean in biology is minor changes within existing species. We can actually see this in our own families. We're different from our parents. They're different from their parents. We're different from our brothers and sisters. And farmers
I
have been
wonder if
seeing
that
this for
argument could like
centuries
be
in
extended
domestic
backwards in
breeding
time or
of plants
something.
and animals. So minor changes within existing species, again, are uncontroversial.
See,
Darwin
he
took
said
things a step
within
further,
species.
though. For him, the minor changes we see in existing species, if given enough time, lead to new species, organs, and body plans. Along the way, beneficial variations are preserved and harmful variations are eliminated by natural selection or survival of the fittest. For Darwin, there was no design in this process. He once wrote, "There seems to be no more design in the variability of organic beings and in the action of natural selection than in the course which the wind blows." So he called his book, The Origin of Species, one long argument. And the argument took this form. He would point to something in the biosphere and argue that it was inexplicable on the theory of creation, but made sense from the point of view of his theory of descent with modification. Starting with the fourth edition of The Origin of Species, Darwin also argued that the idea that living things were created according to a plan is, quote, not a scientific explanation.
Oh, Peter, we
unquote.
switched out.
Now, Darwin's
There we go.
book had no evidence for natural selection. He had none at the time. All he could offer was, as he put it,
Wait a second.
one or two imaginary illustrations.
Let's pause. Let's pause for a moment. First of all, I want to say Vandella in 1998 for $4.99 says, I've seen creationists even get the fictional X-Men lore wrong, so definitely not trusting them with real mutation information. No, absolutely. That's very true. Okay, so let's pick apart that idea that Darwin had no evidence for natural selection. No. So the first chapter of Origin of Species is on artificial selection, right? So Darwin draws an analogy between artificial selection, right? He looks at, okay, so humans take variation. We know that variations happen. We can obviously see that they happen. He just said they happen. And humans can select the variations that they consider beneficial and discard the ones that aren't. Okay, well and good. And he said, all right, so let's take that. Well, then chapter 2 was about variations in nature. And then chapter 3 was actual first chapter about natural selection. So Darwin talks about competition. And he points out that there are food chains, in nature. He talks about an example with, I think it was like clovers, bees, mice, and cats or something like that, where the bees, visit the clovers and then they make their nests. But if there are too many mice in the area, then they'll eat the bees' nests and that will kill off the bees. So you have cats. And so you have all these different animals, struggling against each other. They struggle for resources. They struggle for space. He also, pointed out that he pointed, to very briefly sexual selection in Origin of Species. He sort of briefly laid out, like, males compete for females, and females choose males that they find attractive. So the evidence for competition was everywhere. And that's what drives natural selection, right? Is inter and intra-specific competition. These are the forces that select, non-consciously or unconsciously, that select particular variations to survive and then pass on to the next generation. So to say that Darwin provided no evidence whatsoever for natural selection is just a lie. That's all it is. Just a lie.
And
Do you guys want to add anything?
yeah, quickly, an apology. So On Ra has dogs that like to bark in the live stream. My dog doesn't do that. My dog likes to look at the tablet. I have some icons on my tablet that flash, and then when he touches his nose, when he touches the tablet with his nose, things happen, which is what just happened. Made you full screen.
That's okay. No,
And
it's
then-
fine. It's
and
fine. Don't
then
worry about
and
it.
then look stumped at my monitor that something had changed. So if he's
Peter,
going
are
to
you training him to be like the co-host.
He's going to be the follow-up producer.
Yeah.
Case. I need to have.
If you have an off day, we'll just have him.
Yeah,
produce for us.
He's an apprentice.
Okay. Well, good to know you're training him well.
Yes. Okay. Continue.
Nestle, you want to add anything on that? Or
no, I'm just waiting for when he actually makes an argument.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. We can keep going.
Yeah.
Furthermore, despite the title of his book, he never solved the origin of species. According to historian Neil Gillespie, writing about 40 years ago, it is sometimes said that Darwin converted the scientific world to evolution by showing them the process by which it had occurred. Yet it was actually more Darwin's insistence on totally natural explanations than on natural selection that won their adherence. Which is one reason why we hear so little nowadays about Darwin's contemporary, Alfred Russel Wallace, who also proposed a theory of natural selection. In fact, Wallace had more evidence for his theory than Darwin had for his.
He had
and the two theories were presented.
Pause. Okay, so Wallace's contribution, which was also good, and I don't know, we give Wallace more credit today than we ever have, right? I feel like the history of science is like, in large part, giving credit to the little people, or the people who got like pushed over or looked over, whatever, right? Like that's why we all talk about justice for Rosalind Franklin, right? Because she didn't get to see her work, right? She didn't get to see the fruits of her work. She died sadly of cancer, and Watson, Crick, and Wilkins, got the Nobel Prize. So another example is Marie Tharp, who provided the data for what's his name, Bruce Heason, regarding the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is in part what helped develop the theory of plate tectonics. She was, looked over for a long time because she was a woman doing, work in a man's lab. So yeah, stuff like that. That's silly. But Darwin and Wallace both provided biogeographic evidence for evolution, right? Chapters 11 and 12 of Origin of Species are about the biogeographic evidence for evolution. And it's actually pretty spectacular evidence. For instance, one of my favorite examples that Darwin gives is he talks about cold weather plants that you find on mountains, so very high up in the mountains, and also in the Arctic. And so, yes, Mary Anning gets a lot of cover these days as well. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And so what Darwin pointed out was that there was a lot of evidence, thanks to Louis Agassiz, that indicated there had been a glacial period before, like thousands of years before. And so the glaciers came down into lower and lower latitudes, and this allowed cold weather plants from the Arctic to go further and further south. And so then when the glaciers retreated, the refugia that they were stuck in were these high mountain areas where they are today. And in fact, if you've probably heard of like the Younger Dryas period. So the Younger Dryas was another like return to colder conditions of like 12,000 years ago, something like that. And it's called that because it is associated with the fossil Dryas octopetala, which is this white flower. So because there were lots and lots of those during that time period, that's why it's called the Younger Dryas. So, yeah, I don't know what he means by saying Wallace had more evidence. I don't know what that's in reference to. I've never heard that before. But also, isn't it weird though? Because like, if it's true that Wallace
maybe he's referring to the Wallace line that. Or was the Wallace line named after him? Did Wallace discover the...
Well, he discovered it, but I think it was named the Wallace line later. But he discovered that there was like, Laurasia Therafauna on one side and then like marsupials on the other. But the funny thing about that is, if it's true that Wallace had more evidence of evolution, shouldn't Wells have accepted evolution then? I mean, I don't know. That just strikes me as very strange. He's like, Wallace had more evidence, but you still don't believe him, then what does it matter who had more evidence? I don't know. I don't know. That just seems really weird to me. Anyway, we can keep going, I guess.
Senate on the same day in 1858. Yet we almost never hear of Wallace, who believed that natural selection could not account for our brain, our organs of speech, our hand, or the external form of human beings. For Wallace, there had to be an overruling intelligence involved.
He did, in fact, say
Well,
that.
this idea
in
horrified
the
Darwin
mid-1800s.
because the point of his book was to show that there was no intelligence involved.
I don't think it horrified
Historian Michael
Darwin.
Flannery has written, Darwin's book was a framework that served not only to bolster a materialistic metaphysic, but in effect proposed to become its operative manifesto. Darwinian evolution, according to Flannery, far from being evidence-based science, is one long argument in favor of materialistic philosophy. So Darwin's theory relied less on evidence than on a theological.
So I don't know who that guy is, but that sounds like some creationist stuff. Like, who refers to Darwin to like evolution as it provided the materialistic framework? Like, what? Who cares?
Only creationists say that.
Yeah, only creationists say stuff like that.
Yeah.
The other thing was, I forgot. I just remembered. So the funny thing is, so when Darwin proposed natural selection first, and I know we've talked about this on the show. So really, the Origin of Species proposed two concepts, basically, right? It proposed natural selection and universal common ancestry. Well, natural selection was kind of ignored in lots of places immediately after Origin of Species was published, especially France, for instance, which followed Lamarck well into the 1900s. Some people in America also were against natural selection.
It also had a few leftovers even in the 20th century, even.
Yep. Russia also was against Darwinian evolution pretty early on. So there were lots of places that rejected Darwinian evolution outright and stayed Lamarckian or had some other ideas. Like had Richard Goldschmidt with his macromutations and things like that.
You can look up the history. It's often called the eclipse of Darwinism, where you have like many competing camps, basically.
Yeah. Ironically, it was not natural selection originally that like Darwin sold everybody on. Darwin did sell everyone on universal common descent, and that's funny enough. That's like only like 3 chapters of or well, maybe 4, I guess, of Origin of Species, because it's like he has the 2 geology chapters, like, you know, which a lot of which are like apologia about why there aren't more fossils, but he does have. But in later editions of Origin of Species, he talks more about transitional fossils. Then he has the 2 chapters on biogeography, and then he has his chapter on basically on like vestigial organs, homology, atavisms, things like that. And so
it's funny because it's funny that the common descent was first accepted and not natural selection, because today is exactly the opposite. Like the people who don't accept evolution, they tend to accept natural selection as okay, sure enough, within kind, sure, but they don't accept universal common descent. So it's funny, how this works.
Another instance of like everything getting completely flipped.
Creationists are traveling back in time.
Listen, yeah, you know, with how prevalent like anti-vax stuff also crops up in creationist circles, yeah, you're not wrong.
Kind of a good humorous creationist. They get everything backwards. So why not?
Yeah, it's true.
I think creationists get their own arguments backward. Continue?
Yes. Yeah.
Argument, that is, an argument against creation by design, and a philosophical argument, that is, a definition of science that excluded design, a definition that changed what people had thought of science before. So controversies over evolution ever since Darwin have always involved theology and philosophy. It was there from the very beginning. In the 1930s, a follower of Darwin's, Theodosius Dobzhansky, evolutionary biologist, wrote
Uh-huh.
something very interesting. He distinguished between what he called microevolution and macroevolution. And here's what he wrote.
Uh-huh.
There is no way toward an understanding of the mechanisms of macroevolutionary changes other than through a full comprehension of microevolutionary processes that we can observe within our own lifetimes. Now,
Okay, so pause for a moment.
microevolution
So I don't remember if I've said it on this channel. I did say it on the Arn video I did like a week or so ago. The reason that there is a difference between micro and macro evolution, even though they are like it's a sliding scale, right? It's just a gradient. You know, when do you? And I've given this to. I've argued this with people who are like, no, species are real. Okay, where do you draw the line at species, right? Like when two populations are are capable of interbreeding, at what like percentage of interbreeding events do you consider like now they're new species? Well, it's arbitrary. Oh my goodness. What else did he say? I'm drawing a blank now. Oh, all right. So the reason that micro and macroevolution are separate is back in the 30s and 40s. So those terms were actually coined by a Russian entomologist named Yuri Filipchenko. And the reason is back in those days, one of the camps during the eclipse of Darwinism was the macromutation camp. So Richard Goldschmidt, who's another famous evolutionary biologist, he was also in that group. So basically, you had a bunch of small, you had small variations within species, but to go from one species to another, you had to have a macromutation. So you had a big mutation, and that individual was the first of like a new species, and then they could interbreed and pass it on. All right, and that's how species split.
Yes.
Now that
basically, speciation is the force of a very rare but very distinctive mutation. Basically,
yes,
that's what the idea behind it. And sometimes it occurs actually. Like
yes.
So you can argue that whole genome duplication is a macromutation. Yeah.
Yeah, polyploidy, yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yep, that's yeah. So in part, he was right. Now there were some other parts of his arguments that he got wrong. Like he thought genes worked like enzymes, where the more of them you have, the like more something works, which we don't consider that today. But yeah, that part of the argument
the
was
details were
right.
wrong, and the details were wrong, and it's not very surprising considering that it's almost like 100-year-old science.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. They barely knew what genes were doing at the time. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, they got that part, partially right to an extent. But that's the reason that they're split, that the terms are split, because you couldn't go from one to the other. Nowadays, we know you can. We know via direct observation that a series of small variations add up to big ones. And we've seen this in the field and in the laboratory innumerable occasions. Like there's the concept of the species gradient, the species continuum now, because we have the whole thing. We have observed polymorphisms appearing within populations. We've observed the spread of those, and we've observed populations splitting in two under, different selective regimes. None of this is like really up for debate anymore. And so Jonathan Wells here in the year of our Lord 2023, acting like this is a controversy. It's not. It really isn't. He's just a hack.
It has been a controversy for the last 50 years.
Yeah. It's like, nah, not really. And funny enough, so natural selection didn't really didn't be seen as like one of the primary drivers of evolution until the 1930s, when you had the Neo-Darwinian revolution, which married Darwinism, the original Darwinism, with Mendelian inheritance and population genetics, and you finally have an actual mechanism for explaining how variations not only arise but are also propagated through a population. That took like 80 years from the origin of species. 70 years. It took about 70 years from the publication of Origin of Species to the Neo-Darwinian synthesis, to which now everyone's on the same page about natural selection. 70 years. That's a long time. And he's just acting like, everyone just got on board with natural selection. No, it didn't happen. So.
Also, I remember now who I was referring to a while back. Like you talked to someone called Jennifer, also called Church of Entropy.
How long
Or
ago was
maybe
that? Was that like 6 years ago?
Maybe many years, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've
Like when you were saying about like, oh, there are some people who won't even accept like dog evolution. I think maybe I'm misremembering the person. I don't know.
no, I mean you're probably right, but if it's that long, I forget.
Yeah.
I've you know.
I think it can easily be 5 years. I think it could have been 5
Yeah,
years.
because my
even.
channel's been. So I started my channel in 2016. So it's been what? It's like 7 years. Yeah. So
I don't think it was that
Yeah.
long ago. I think she popped up
Yeah.
about years ago.
How
'Cause I-
long ago?
About 2 years, I think. I bumped into her on Amy
I
Newman's
just don't
channel, so-
recognize that name at all. I don't recognize that name. Hold on a sec. Let me look it up.
Like it-
Whoops.
like it's-
She's done several debates on MDD, and she's a freak.
I think she's also a
frequent-
flat earther too. I think or not.
I think so. Yeah.
Who is this? Standing
Yeah,
for
she's just-
Truth? No, that's not
Church,
it.
Church of Entropy. Church of
Yeah.
Entropy. Jennifer.
Church?
I think yeah.
Church of Entropy? Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Actually, wait. Maybe I think something is starting to come back. Wait. Hold on. Is this?
Zooming in on Jackson's brain, neuron starting activating.
Yeah. Jen Panpsychism. I talked to a Panpsychism. Well, no, that was a guy a long time ago. Did I? Jen? Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't
Well,
remember.
I
her.
think it was on. I think it was on T-Jump. T-Jump's. channel,
Oh, the Karma lady. Oh yes, I do remember her. She's a freaking loon. No wonder I like memory holder because I
didn't want to be so specific, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, the lady who yes. Oh my gosh, I do remember that. Okay. Story time for everybody. So T-Jump asked if I could do like a 2-hour debate with this woman, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. We chatted a little bit on Discord, and then we start, and like 30 minutes into it, I was like, it's impossible to talk to you. I'm gonna play video games. And so I did.
That's
I just played video games while chatting with her. Which is not the craziest thing I've done on stream, Peter. You're not allowed to say. But I was just like, nah, I'm done. There's no, it's not worth talking to her. She's nuts. But yeah, oh my gosh. Nestle, thank you for reminding me of that. Thanks. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Yeah, I think I memory hold it.
Yeah. On that note,
God.
I was supposed to be doing a show a few hours ago, which again got canceled because this guy I will ask him for a date and a time, and he said, yeah, I can probably do that. And then he waits until one day before the show airs to say, oh, I forgot. I think I'm going to go play basketball. And I'm not even kidding. And this guy
I believe you.
Hold on. This guy wants me to help him get to Arn to do the phylogeny challenge. No, not the phylogeny challenge. The challenge his wife took, where Arn will
right.
Make him accept evolution, given that he has to do the homework. And the reason he wants to do that is because he's in trouble at school. He's not getting the grades necessary to move on, so he needs some extra schooling in evolution. Meanwhile, this guy is a flat earther, believes in chemtrails, believes I'm not sure if he believes that aliens are roaming the planet
now.
Yeah, so and the problem is he's a likable guy. He's not like Jen. He's a likable guy. You can have a conversation with. but he is
But was I right about
willing to learn.
Was I right about? Was I right about Jen? Like I think if I
Yes.
remember correctly, I'm
Yes.
not sure, but Jen also denies that dogs even evolved. I think from wolves or not. Or am I wrong
I
about
think
that?
so.
I
think,
don't remember. Like I said, memory hold.
Yeah,
I think that was
yeah.
was a topic on Amy Newman's channel one time, like because it does
Somebody
sound familiar.
was on Modern Day Debate. Somebody was on Modern Day Debate and was like, I think it was like a debate RJ did, where one of the people he was debating, thought that even dogs aren't like descended from wolves or something like that. It was like him and AJ or something like that against some creationists. And one of them was like, no, I don't think dogs descended from wolves. And it's like, are you insane? Like, are you
maybe
insane?
I'm like mangling different loons together into one compartment in my brain.
No,
yeah.
you're right. It's like they all kind of fade together after.
Yes, they all cross over into
You're
each
like,
other.
are you that guy who thought this? No, but I do think that. Like, oh okay. When
of course, yeah.
they all, they all have the same arguments,
Mhm.
and like they're not that different, if I'm honest. So it's easy to mix them up because they all have the same. They're all like, genetic entropy, kinds, what the frick ever. It's all the same.
You all
right?
sound the same. You all sound like loons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
like
meanwhile,
like,
every
free
single
thinkers
one
meme.
of them thinks that they're special and that they have arguments that you've never heard of.
Yes. God, yes, they do. Yeah, they really do. Yeah. There was something else I was going to say, and I can't remember anymore. Man, I'm upset. But I
Creationists
have
do
to
that
remember
to
that,
your brain,
Nestling.
Jackson. They do that to your
No,
brain.
I'm mad at Nestling for bringing it back up. Now I have to remember it again. Okay.
Like it well, like have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yes, yeah, I have.
Yeah, like your memory was deep in the abyss of lost memories, and it jumped right back up from the abyss.
It did. Yeah, you gave it like a rocket, so it was able to ride all the way back up. Yeah. Thanks, Nestling. I appreciate it. Okay, we can keep going.
Okay.
Refers to minor changes within existing species. Macroevolution for Dobzhansky meant the origin of new species, organs, and body plans. So Dobzhansky concluded, for this reason, we are compelled at the present level of knowledge reluctantly to put a sign of equality between the mechanisms of macro and microevolution. And proceeding on this assumption to push our investigations as far ahead as this working hypothesis will permit. Now, although Darwin didn't use the words Dobzhansky used, the essence of Darwin's theory is essentially Dobzhansky's extrapolation. That is, microevolution given long enough will lead to macroevolution. Note that Darwin did not write a book titled How Existing Species Change Over Time. If he had, probably no one would have noticed.
Wait.
He wrote a book titled...
Wait a second. Wait, the book is about how species change over time. What are you talking about? What does this even mean? That's literally what the book is about. The origin of species is about how a species changes to a new species or gives rise to new species. Like, what? Excuse me? Am I crazy?
No.
Is there a gas leak?
No. Oh.
I haven't read Original Species in depthly, but I have heard from P.Z. Myers that the Original Species doesn't give a sufficient explanation for speciation. Of course, yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, and you're right. There's so Darwin kind of gives sort of a vague like natural selection causes speciation through like interspecific competition, kind of. It's and he also kind of says like it's also allopatric. He's like, population
like
moves
one population moves to a new area and different conditions of survival.
Yeah. And he just kind of sort of vaguely gestures at both of those, but again, like we're talking at a time pre-genetics, so he didn't have a lot to work with. All he had was like the distribution of existing populations.
Didn't have a mechanism.
Well,
Oh
think
yeah,
they had a mechanism.
like
for it.
he couldn't explain inheritance. That was a big
Yes.
sticking
Yes.
issue. Yeah, that was a
Yep.
big sticking issue. Yeah.
Which is also in part why he took so long to publish Origin, was that he had no mechanism
Yeah.
for inheritance, and the one
Yeah.
he had, he wasn't. Darwin was like, I guess you
Blending,
could say
yeah.
he was like fine with it at first, but then after Fleming was like, this doesn't really work out, Darwin was like, okay, it's not this, but I don't really know what.
He thought it was blending, right? Like the traits just
Yes.
blended into each
And
other.
what's very ironic about that, about the fact that he really didn't have an explanation for it. He wrote a letter to Wallace. Actually, Wallace wrote him a letter first, and Darwin exchanged, in which Wallace with butterflies and Darwin with primroses both did experiments in which they got particulate inheritance. They basically did Mendel's pea experiment before Mendel did. And Darwin was like, huh, weird. Oh,
Curious.
well. Yeah. Well, because Darwin did not have a mathematical background. Darwin was trained, well, first as like, what was it? It was like, he wanted to go to medical school first.
Did Mendel have a medical background, or I'm not sure.
I don't know too much about
Yeah.
Mendel's background, other than that he was like in the clergy. Other than that, I don't. If Joel's in here, maybe he can, or Jamie can. Maybe someone can speak to that, but I'm not really sure about that particularly. But Darwin did not have a mathematical background. He did like, he tried to do medicine first. That didn't really work out because he didn't like the sight of blood. I get it. Then he, the
squeamish.
parsonage didn't really work out. So he finally landed a place where he could, go on the HMS Beagle, do naturalism, and that worked out, obviously. And then he, came back home, wrote several books on geology first, then wrote a bunch of stuff about barnacles, and that was sort of his forerunner to Origin, in a sense, was his work with barnacles, and then Origin of Species. Then he did some stuff with natural selection, artificial selection, and then he kind of flipped to plants, and then did plant stuff for the rest of his life. So, yeah, Darwin was more of a like a hands-on, in the field naturalist kind of guy, whereas like Mendel's more of your like computational biology sort of guy. And while Darwin did have a review of Mendel's experiment, it's also believed that Darwin's German was very poor. So even though he had it, he probably was just like, I don't really care, and even with his math, he couldn't really, with his lack of mathematical abilities, couldn't really understand what the point of the experiment was. So that's why Mendel kind of, languished in obscurity until the early 1900s.
Okay, of course, it's the case that most, like on the phenotype level, most traits appear to blend. Because
yes, that's true.
You have many genes involved.
Correct.
That's curious about the Mendelian inheritance. Like Mendelian inheritance is actually the exception, not the rule.
Yes.
But we had to learn the exception to get to the details of how it worked at the genetic level. That's the whole point of it. Yeah.
The good thing is that Mendel happened to work with a plant in which several of its traits do Mendelian inheritance, like the stem length, the flower color, the flower colors, the pea colors, the wrinkled versus smooth. Fortunately, a lot of the traits that he worked with for Pisum sativum do show Mendelian inheritance, right?
Yes.
And the reason he chose those was he was working with mice originally, but apparently mice having sex was a little too racy for the order that he was a part of. And so they were like, hey, maybe don't do the animal experiments, maybe do something else instead. So he switched to plants. So then of course it wasn't until like Hugo de Vries and some other guys in the early 1900s, along with like Thomas Hunt Morgan's work with fruit flies, finally sort of solidified Mendelian inheritance. So yeah, science takes time.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, we talked about that in was it Eve's Tale, I think.
Oh, also, but we also had like an old series about genetics too. That we like.
We did.
Forgot about.
We did. Yeah, which you wrote. Mm-hmm. Yep. Very
Yeah.
good series. All right, we can keep going.
Oh, we have a
Yeah.
question from the chat. Hikat asks, how
Oh,
does
shoot.
Flurf theory mesh with alien theories? There are several explanations.
Only Earth is flat.
No, but there are several theories that they've come up with. So first, there's the aliens are demons thing, and then I met Flurfers who claim that aliens come from inside the Earth, where there's no inside a flat Earth. There literally
Crap,
isn't, because it's a plane.
Crap, people.
The mole people.
But I mean, these are
Yeah.
the same people who also think that Noah's Ark was a real thing, and both the
It's true.
meat-eating and the plant-eating animals survived after getting off the boat when there weren't even plants. So that none of them
Mhm.
had anything to eat, apparently. But they thrived and
Details, Peter,
multiplied.
details.
Yeah.
They
Logic,
just ate dirt.
yeah,
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
logic isn't their strong.
Very salty dirt.
Yeah, they just ate the salted earth. That's all they ate
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
decades and decades. Yeah.
They
Okay, we can
survived
keep
on
going.
Noah's tears.
The origin of species. Now, today, the scientific consensus is to lump microevolution and macroevolution together. Eugenie
Yep.
Scott, former director of the Pro-Evolution National Center for Science Education, wrote years ago that she would introduce college students to evolution as an issue of the history of the planet.
I hope they got
as the way
introduced to
we
it
try
before
to
college.
understand change through time. The present is different from the past. Evolution
That's
happened.
true.
There's no debate within science as to whether it happened, and
That's
so on.
also true.
Well, she's right
Yep.
about that, but that's referring, of course, to microevolution. But then Scott advocated confusing students by using the same term to cover macroevolution. She explained that only after she got the students nodding in assent to her change over time definition would she bring in Darwin's, quote, big idea, unquote, of unguided macroevolution. But that, she wrote, is what we want students to know about organic evolution. The scientific consensus
Okay.
now is not just to confuse microevolution and macroevolution,
I
but
feel like it's
also
not
to
confused.
present evolution as though it were a fact. I will
Which it
argue
is.
throughout these lectures that that's not true. But to save time
Then
and
get
avoid
on it.
long-windedness in my lectures, I will use the
I've been
word
waiting this
evolution
for an hour.
to mean what the consensus means. That is unguided macroevolution, unless I specify otherwise.
In the same way that the term evolution can mean different things, so too can the term science. And as with evolution, you
Sure.
have to keep a weather eye out for a bait and switch. Jonathan Wells explains
I
this
feel like
for
there
us in
isn't
his
really a bait
third
and
lecture,
switch.
the final short lecture in Unit 1 of his new Discovery U online course.
What is science?
Discovery you.
The word
Oh,
comes from the
no.
Latin word scientia, which means
Which means
simply
knowledge.
knowledge. So
Whoa.
in its broadest sense, science is knowledge.
Whoa.
In the modern world, though, it has taken on some more
Mind
specific meanings.
blown.
For many people, science means technology. When they hear the word
Sure.
science, they think of that which has brought us cell phones and cars and televisions and computers and surgical
Cool.
techniques and dental techniques
Cool.
and so on, all of which
Also
have
cool.
enriched our lives and contribute to our
Uh-huh.
civilization. For some
Sure.
people, science means something somewhat different. It means the scientific establishment, the group of people who
Okay.
are trained and employed to do research in various areas. They work at
Okay.
universities, research centers,
Uh-huh.
maybe private companies,
Uh-huh.
but that is science for some people, the scientific establishment.
Okay.
Well, the majority
Cool.
opinion of the scientific establishment, of the people in the establishment, is called
Mm-hmm.
the scientific consensus. It's sometimes
Okay.
expressed as scientists agree, even though
Sure.
often some don't. It's sometimes expressed as
Wait.
science
Okay, pause.
says.
Okay, so when you say, okay, I'm pretty sure most rational, sane adults understand that the term consensus does not necessarily mean 100% of the people agree with something. It
No.
means the majority of the people agree. Right? I'm At least that's the way I use the term. Like, okay, sure, Bobby doesn't agree, but the consensus, the other 19 people in the group, they all agree. That's
And everyone is scouring at Bobby.
right, and everyone's scowling at Bobby. Like, I feel like that's the normal usage of the term consensus. I don't know anyone who uses it to mean like 100% agreement.
But,
I
Jackson,
don't, but
we're talking about a guy who thinks that when it comes to evolution, that we should listen to dentists, should listen to engineers. I mean,
or
because
lawyers, yeah.
all those
Mhm.
people have PhDs in science, so they obviously know everything about anything.
Very true.
This is the problem. This is literally the problem. Consensus doesn't mean that your car mechanic, the guy who in the intro sends off our dear friend that we talked about earlier, you
Mhm.
don't know anything about cars, so you go away. Pretty much what evolutionary biologists think about dentists and engineers want to chime in on evolution. Yeah, they might
Mhm.
not agree, probably because they're not in that field. And
Right.
last I checked, when you have consensus, it means something has passed peer review, which doesn't mean that's
Mhm.
100% right, because there could still be people who make new discoveries, which slightly alters the thing that has become consensus already.
Mhm.
Why do we
Yeah.
need to make it look like science is just one's, because wait, that what religion is all about? Isn't that what intelligent design is all about? It's my opinion there's a designer, and therefore you need to accept my opinion as if it's valid. It isn't. Produce a designer.
Yeah.
Produce the possibility of a designer. Show us how the designer works.
Mhm.
One of the best questions I've seen Arn Ra ask, one of the people that he had on his channel, how does God cause mutation?
Quantum mechanics. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the answer. That was the answer. And then Arn said, "So
Yep.
how is God doing quantum mechanics?" And he said, "Just like we do." Arn says, "With physical tools." Does God have
Correct.
physical
Exactly.
tools? It's
Jamie
Who was
E.
it again?
Jamie E.
Who was it again?
that was a guy who Arn had on his channel who had
Oh,
evidence
just
for,
just a random guy. Oh.
yeah, who had evidence for God, scientific evidence for God, and his scientific evidence for God was, I don't understand X or God. This is one of the things that annoys me most. If you have people like the intelligent design community come up with something that supports your proposition, and stop trying to find holes in something that is well established. Come up with something new that actually points, that is evidence for your position that there is an intelligent designer. Because that is what none of them do. It's young Earth creationists don't do this. In spite of there being an Institute of Creation Research, which doesn't do any research in creationism. Not a single thing.
And also we also don't need them to poke holes in evolution. The ones who are doing it are already scientists. Like
Yes.
evolution didn't stop in the 1940s. Like it continued to develop more stuff because scientists were continuing to find places where something was missing and they added new stuff to it.
Poking
Yeah.
holes, literally poking holes in science that had been done before, seeing if they got something wrong, seeing if there was something new they could find out about it. That's what leads to new discoveries. These people do nothing of the kind and call themselves scientific. They produce
Yeah.
literally nothing, not a scientific paper, And then they start whining, yeah, but because it's not going to be accepted. If it is good science, obviously it's going to be accepted. But you need to have something that is actually true and not just making claims and then pointing, what about your stuff? Doesn't matter what about our stuff. Come up with your own ideas and come up with your own evidence. Then we might have to have a look at it. If you got something.
Yeah.
That's how science works. Want to know what science is? That's science.
Yep, exactly. Jamie E, coming in clutch as always, found Gregor Mendel's background. He did have some mathematical background. He studied math along with physics and natural science at the University of Vienna. Before that, he apparently worked as a substitute teacher of mathematics and Greek for secondary school. Well, thank you, Jamie E. You've come to our rescue as always.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. I was also curious. It's like the often like quote unquote revolutions in science that were made by people who were like just outside the field, with a different perspective, who saw things that the people had missed. Like, of course, if you have a mathematical mind, you pick up on these peculiar things more quicker than if you learn phenotype just without having any idea of genetics. And you would, of course, have the conception that inheritance works by blending, because that's how we have believed that inheritance worked for most of human history, I think, right? Like most of human history, we believed that inheritance was blending. Although I think, there was also the belief that only the male gave information, like the homunculus idea or something.
Right.
Yeah, that was also a bit weird. Yeah.
Yeah. True. All right, we can keep going.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
the consensus throughout history has turned out to be quite unreliable at times. In 1500, the scientific consensus was that the sun goes around the earth. In 1750, the scientific consensus was that some simple creatures, supposedly simple, like maggots and mice, spontaneously generate in rotting garbage. Nobody believes that anymore. In 1900, as I pointed out in my first lecture...
I'm curious. Can you pause for a moment, Peter?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what experiments anyone ever did to verify that the Earth goes around, that the sun goes around the Earth. I'm curious to know what arguments, what experiments, what observations were made, or what experiments were done to verify that, like, mice and maggots come from, like, rotting meat or old socks, things like that. There weren't any. There were no experiments that verified either of those ideas. But when experiments were done, it turned out that both those ideas were wrong, right? And that the Earth goes around the sun, and that like old, broth and whatnot does not actually give rise to living organisms. It is pre-existing organisms that give rise to living organisms. So trying to say that the consensus has been wrong about stuff in the past based on no experiments, therefore the current fields of science are also probably wrong, despite having literally a century of experiments and observations, is kind of insane. It's kind of an insane claim.
It's a common argument from quacks too, like science has been wrong before, so therefore they are wrong now. That's not how it works. Like, of course, consensus doesn't mean absolute truth. We know that. Like, we know the consensus can be wrong. We know that. Mm-hmm. So, but to imply disingenuously that therefore you shouldn't rely on consensus as a general heuristics, because like no single individual can know everything about everything, right? So so if you want to know, if you want to gauge the most probable fact of something, and the quickest thing that you can do without having to learn everything by yourself is to see, what is the consensus among the people who are studying this. that's a pretty simple way that we can use to come quick to a conclusion. Of course, still a provisional conclusion, but still
Yeah.
it's better than nothing. But that doesn't mean that to imply that therefore you shouldn't rely on consensus at all is disingenuous. Yeah.
Yeah. Vandalia 1998 for 4.99 says, so is he saying we shouldn't trust science because it changes so much, or that evolution will change with more research because science
Yes.
does update? Yeah, kind of both. He
Yeah.
is saying we shouldn't. Well, it's funny because he's saying we shouldn't trust science, but then of course intelligent design wants to appear scientific, right? Their whole gig is being a scientific alternative to evolution. So yeah, don't trust science unless it's our science. Then it's okay.
Yeah. It's also a bit of the Galileo gambit, like, oh, back then Galileo overturned the consensus now, so we are the new Galileos. We are the new ones.
Yeah, I'm actually so also fun fact, Wells is an HIV/AIDS denialist. So it's not just evolution. Yes, that he bucks the trend on. He's also he's also on other more, I would argue, more sinister because it's more damaging anti-consensus views as well. So yeah.
Yep. We're now crossing the line between life and death about that. Yeah.
Yep. Which not surprising. I mean, yeah. So whatever.
That stuff does make me mad. Yeah.
On the thing that mice would arise from I don't know, potting meat and garbage.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of weird that the people who study reality finally come up with what happens in reality, and then step away from a silly idea that someone had who couldn't explain anything and didn't perform any experiments to figure out where those might came from? That's how science works.
It was
if you figure it out, if you start studying it, you're probably going to come to a solution, and that will eradicate false ideas.
Yeah, you have to remember, like, these people have very small, very, very simple, primitive technology, and a lot of what they see in the natural world is driven by, like, intuition, things that they can, like, reason out to themselves, like, the humor stuff, like, you have your humors, and you got to get your humors in line, and all that sort of stuff. But there's no experiment that could verify that, and that's the difference.
Yes.
There's no
people
experiment.
People knew that blood was important for something, at least.
Yes, correct. Yeah, blood's important, right? You have different, like, liquids in you and whatnot. But like, they didn't know precisely what
they need to
blood
be balanced.
Right.
Hold on.
So people
Nestle,
relied in large
say
part on
that.
their intuitions.
You say that, but having too much blood was bad at some point, because we still have these things outside of bars.
Yeah, exactly. They need to be in balance. That's why. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and we figured out that was wrong. Taking someone who's ill's blood, probably not going to improve their health. Especially if it's done with knives that were used all day for shaving other people.
Oh, look, you have tetanus now. Yay.
Yeah. I mean,
you thought your other problem was bad.
Yeah. Let's give you a new problem.
Yeah, I mean, these people didn't have great technology. It was very simple technology, and they didn't have the means to investigate a lot of things. And so, he's just being disingenuous, comparing these things with modern sciences where we have much more advanced technology. So, he's just being disingenuous. He's just a hack.
You know what we also don't believe? The fact that we have priests who heal people, prophets who can heal people just by laying a hand on them, because we've investigated that.
Well, some people believe that.
Oh yeah. Just curious. I know we've been pausing for a moment, but how far are we in the video as of now?
Let me check.
I think it's only like 22 minutes, isn't it?
We have 5 minutes left.
Oh, we're doing pretty good. All right, let's keep chugging.
He hasn't even made one argument against.
No.
I think he's supposed to come back for another podcast. I'm sorry, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't watch it. I thought based on the title, he would make an argument. But
It's a
It's
20,
not your fault. But
it's a 20-minute video,
fault.
Neslick. You have to fill that. So the first 16 minutes are basically an introduction in his way of thinking and why he disapproves of what you're thinking. So
maybe it'll be like the last 60 seconds or something. It's gonna
yeah,
be
the last
actual-
60 seconds, he's going to come up with some kind of wisdom that we've never heard of. Let's
maybe. All right.
The scientific consensus was that the continents have always been where they are now. They have not drifted.
Cool.
So in these cases
Cool.
and many others, the scientific consensus turned out to be false.
Cool.
Another way to look at science is to look at what scientists do. According
Okay.
to Linus Pauling, who won 2 Nobel
Uh-huh.
Prizes, science is the search for truth. And scientists search
Sure.
for truth by testing hypotheses, proposing hypotheses
Uh-huh.
first of all, and then testing
Uh-huh.
them with observations and experiments, that is, with
Yeah.
evidence. Actually, we all do
Uh-huh.
this at some level, if you think about it.
Whoa.
In your daily life, you have certain ideas and you compare them with your observations and experience,
Uh-huh.
and you decide whether the ideas are true or false. So,
Uh-huh.
in this broad sense, we're all scientists. Technology comes from this. Someone proposes an idea and then tests it against the evidence. If it works,
Cool.
if it fits the evidence,
Mhm.
then it
with the one exception, people like you, Jackson. Evolutionary biologists are not scientists because their
Right, of
findings
course,
go
of course,
against
yeah.
my opinion. So that's not science.
Yeah.
becomes
Which also,
successful
I guess he means. Oh, I guess by that he also means like when you use evolution to like evolve C3 plants into C4 plants that you can then sell to like developing nations. I guess that's also not evolution, but whatever. It's fine.
That
Anyway,
I mean, Jackson, by definition,
Mhm.
that involved intelligence.
correct. So it's intelligent
He-
design.
It
Yep,
is
even though-
intelligently
yep, mhm.
designed. So that's of course a point for him. Apparently,
That's true. How could I be so foolish?
yeah.
All right, keep going.
technology. If it doesn't work, it's discarded. Well, there's another definition of science, of how scientists do science, and that is science is the search for natural explanations. This is often
Okay.
justified by something called methodological naturalism. When we do experiments, we can only do them on material objects and the forces among them.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
true.
this methodology, this experimental method, sort of limits us to explaining things naturally. But there's
That's
something else
true.
often at work here. It's an assumption that many scientists have, many people have. If we search
Wrong.
long enough for natural explanations, we will eventually find them. That is, we can
No.
actually explain everything
No,
naturalistically
and pause.
or materialistically.
Oh,
So that's wrong. So and I'll give you an example. Recently, I guess it's been a few months now. We did a video on the miracle, the supposed miracles in Lourdes, France, right? In which there's like a pool, a grotto where people can go bathe and supposedly get healed by Virgin Mary. Okay, great.
famously
So if
famously
it were
closed.
the case,
Jackson famously closed during the pandemic
right?
because
Hey, listen, she can only do like diphtheria, measles, and rubella. She can't do COVID-19. It's too new. But anyway,
God is still working on the vaccine.
yeah.
he's a little bit behind Pfizer and Moderna. But anyways,
Yeah.
so if it were the case that when people bathed in the water at Lourdes and they were healed, their DNA changed just by getting in this water, there is no physical naturalistic explanation that could account for how water changed like your DNA, right? There's no by itself, just regular water by itself. There's no naturalistic account by which that could occur, which is also what we're going to talk about with regard to cell phone radio waves in an upcoming video, because again, there's no mechanism for like these natural objects or forces or whatever, which are very low energy, having some kind of major effect on you. There's just no physical way for that to happen. So if it were the case that this were happening, that every single person who gets in the water, the grotto, and they've got a million different maladies, but inevitably every single time they came out, they were perfectly healed. There is no natural explanation that could account for that. Now, I'm sure you could posit some sort of like exotic thing, but some, exotic force, whatever. But without finding any sort of force, no matter like what experiment, what observation you did, the very best that any scientist could say, honestly, is that we simply don't know. We have no explanation for how this happens.
Well,
And that's okay. It's okay to not have an explanation.
what they could do is, let's say this pool would work. Then we could establish whether or not it works by doing tests on people who go into the pool and check them before and after. If they are indeed healed, then scientists can come up with the explanation. This pool is healing them. The how is a bigger problem. But they could
the
definitely
actual mechanical way that it heals them. Yeah.
But they could definitely, and this is basically similar to Darwin figuring out common descent, not having the mechanism, but still coming up with the correct thing on how things happen. So we could definitely see supernatural forces at work. We couldn't explain them, but we could see that they work.
Right, exactly. And the honest thing to say in that case would just be, we don't know how it happens. That would be the honest thing to say. But what he's saying is like, no, that's not allowed. Yeah, it is actually. That is allowed. You are allowed to say, I don't know how this thing is happening. Now, as a scientist, you are encouraged, therefore, of course, to go try to figure out how it happens, obviously. But if we're dealing with supernatural forces that are happening reliably, and we just can't figure it out, we get chemists, physicists, biologists, everybody in there, and no one knows how it's happening, then at that point, we're allowed to say we don't know. We have no mechanical explanation.
Yeah, but we can no longer
he
deny...
He's conflating two different things.
If that happens, we can no longer deny that it is actually happening. That is the main point.
He's saying that the assumption that there might be an explanation out there is the same as the assumption that there is an explanation to be found. There's, of course, those are different things. Like we might be able to do, but it is not the same as saying, oh, there is a way to do this. Yeah, these are two different things.
And also, you have to remember, like, you have to incorporate like parsimony and testability into your explanations. It's not that you can just posit wildly anything. You have to it has to be parsimonious and it has to be testable. Otherwise we're not really doing science. So, yeah.
Up to you.
Anyway, yep.
Yeah, you have a super chat, Jackson.
Oh,
we already said that one. We already said that one, Peter. That was the last comment.
Okay. I forgot.
Yeah.
That's how good my memory. Did I even highlight it? Okay.
I don't know. Well, you can right now if you want. Yeah, if you haven't, we can do that.
I'll highlight it anyway, and we'll continue.
Okay. All right.
Well, this is no longer method. This is philosophy. In fact, it's materialistic philosophy. Matter and the forces among material objects are the only realities. Mind, free will, spirit, God, intelligent design, these are only illusions in materialistic philosophy.
Right. You know what?
From the late 1990s through the mid-2000s, there was a big controversy in Kansas over what standards the state should use for high school students and elementary school students in science. And there was, in particular, a big controversy over how the standards should define science. At the time, most states defined science in terms of observations and experiments. But there was a group in Kansas that wanted to change the Kansas science definition to mean the search for natural explanations. At the time, a Kansas biology professor wrote,
I've never actually heard about this.
Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. Well, this is materialistic science, not empirical science. The natural explanation takes priority over the evidence. This is quite different from evidence-based science.
No. The natural explanation doesn't take precedent over the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence leads
Yeah,
us
I've
to
never
the
heard this
explanation.
before.
That's
Yeah,
literally
I don't know what he's
backwards.
referring to with this like Kansas thing, the Kansas science. I don't know what that is a reference to. Maybe it was something, maybe, but like I don't. I've never heard of it. You
I've
said
never
this is
heard
late
of it either.
'90s to early 2000s. Yeah, I've never heard this reference before, so I don't know. I just don't
I
know.
think I know. I think I know what he's talking about. But I need to look it up to.
Or maybe
know it.
Jamie E. Get on it. Find out what he's referring to, please. Yeah, because I don't know. So anyway, all right, we can keep going.
Now, when I was at Princeton in the early 60s, I read a book that came out at the time by philosopher Thomas Kuhn titled The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. In the book, Kuhn pointed out that most periods
Isn't
in
he a
science are
theologian?
characterized by what he called normal science. Scientists are busy solving problems within an existing conceptual framework. But then
No,
every now and
maybe not.
then, enough data
he wouldn't.
accumulate to challenge the existing framework, and what we have then is a scientific revolution. And Kuhn
Okay.
pointed out that in the course of a scientific revolution, the actual definition of science may change. It changed
Okay.
at the time of Newton. As I've
Sure.
pointed out, it also changed in the time of Darwin. Darwin redefined science to exclude design. Well, if data accumulate to show that the Darwinian framework is false, we may experience another scientific revolution, and we may find that the definition of science changes once again, perhaps back
Okay.
to empirical science rather than materialistic science.
Wait,
You've been
hold on.
listening to
Oh, well, it's over. Never mind. Okay, but also isn't materialism like a subset of empiricism? Like you can't have materialism without having empiricism, right? That's how you would
Mhm.
learn about the world. Or what were you saying, Nestle?
I was just no, you can go at like I've just found what he was referencing earlier about the
What was he referencing?
Kansas definition of science in education thing.
Oh, well, tell us about it. What was it about?
Oh, like it's like I kind of read it from an article from Berkeley EDU's website. I can link it in the
Okay,
chat. There
sure.
you go.
Yeah.
It says that in 2005, the Kansas State Board of Education enacted a seemingly minor change in the state science teaching standards. Up to the time, science had been defined as a standard way as the human activity, or quote, the human activity of seeking natural explanations for what we observe in the world around us, close quote. But after this change, the definition of science became, quote, a systematic method of continuing investigation that uses observation, hypothesis testing, measurement, experimentation, logical argument, and theory building to lead to more adequate explanations of natural phenomena, close quote. But scientists and science teachers and many members of the general public objected to the change as a result of the protest, and after the election of a new state board of education in 2007, the definition was shifted back to the original. So yeah, the article goes further into explaining why this change was a big deal. Why must there be the word natural explanation there? Yeah. And
Gotcha.
I think John well got it backwards. Like I think didn't Wells just say that the original definition was without natural explanation, and then they were trying to have it include the term natural explanation, but he got it backwards. Like the original contained.
Yes, that's what I got too.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, so he got the chronology backwards. As I said before, creationists are traveling back in time.
Yeah.
Not Jonathan Wells completely misrepresenting a source again. Whoa, crazy stuff. Well, on the one hand, folks, I'm sorry that he didn't present like a single argument in this. I didn't realize that it would be like his backstory the whole time. I thought it was going to be more than that. My bad. So, oh well. I mean, that's the end of the episode, though, isn't it?
I think so. I think we've got
Yeah.
I think I can play a small part of what
Introductory lectures by Jonathan Wells, with which he opens his new Discovery U online course investigating
Gross.
evidence for and against evolution. You can find the rest of this course and others by visiting discoveryu.org.
DiscoveryU.org. Maybe this will give us some new content. I am not registering. That is not happening.
I didn't know how
$100 for this course?
I was
Bull. No, I'm not
waiting
paying
for
that.
it.
Yeah.
You have to pay for this.
Yeah.
There is
Bull.
money
Nope,
involved.
sorry. Not happening.
Oh, we added a U after our name, so therefore you owe us.
It's literally just PragerU. Again, that's literally all it is. Okay, actually, here's a free one. There's a free one called Discovering Intelligent Design. Take a journey into Take a journey into the scientific evidence for intelligent design.
Like, why are you like? Shouldn't there be a law that prevents you from calling yourself a university, even if you use a loophole? Like, oh, we only use the single letter U in our name. It's not.
Oh, Peter,
so
they
we-
have videos. We're
Yeah.
downloading. Peter, can you download the free stuff?
Like, why isn't there a law against this to call yourself a university?
Because free speech, First Amendment, you can do whatever you want, basically.
And that's
I know it sounds crazy, but like,
But you also cannot call yourself a doctor, because that would be mispractice of that name, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, okay. Well,
if
Of
this
course,
is co-
of course, Kent Hovind
technically,
found a
you can't
loophole
actually
one.
wait. Yes, I'm pretty sure you can't. You, I don't think it's illegal to call your. It's not illegal to call yourself a doctor. I'm pretty sure. Someone correct me,
Really?
but I'm pretty sure it's not. You can just call yourself doctor. I mean, look at Kent Hovind. He calls himself
Yeah,
Dr.
but
Dino.
of course, he got a a diploma.
Yep. You can call
For some
yourself.
reason, it's not letting me.
You can call yourself a
found a way
doctor.
around it.
You can call yourself
found
a
a way around
doctor,
it.
but it's not allowed to put PhD behind your name if you don't actually have a PhD.
I
Obviously,
mean, I
The
think
system
you
is broken.
can do it, but it's like it's frowned upon because you're just lying, you know.
The system is broken. Yeah.
So it's not. Yeah, it's not working. Hold on, let me see if I can open it on my computer because it wasn't opening on my phone. It says,
Dr. Dre.
do I have to sign in? It says, oh, enroll. Do I have to give them my credit card information?
Oh.
No, email. Okay,
I
well,
also-
hold on.
Oh.
Hold on, folks. We're gonna do this. We're gonna sign up right now. Sure.
Are you going to pay?
Uh,
Are you going to pay?
I'm not paying the $100 now. I'm signing up for the free one. Unless it asks for my credit card number, then no.
All right.
Okay, let's do that.
I also believe that Stephen Meyer also has a course as well.
Okay, I did it.
Yeah.
Oh, that video. Hold on. Diddly dum.
Stephen Myers also has a course or lecture series as well. Yeah.
Certainly not happening. Let's see. Which of the following is true of universal common ancestry? Here's the quiz. It is an undisputed fact. It is a mechanism for how organisms evolve over time. It predicts that all living organisms will use the same amino acid sequence in crucial proteins. It holds that humans and bacteria share a common ancestor. Which of the
last
following?
one
And
is
then,
the best.
and then
Yeah.
all of the above. Well, it's.
The last one is the last one, I think. Yeah.
I guess it is an choose only one best is an undisputed fact, but it's not undisputed. It is a fact. It predicts that all living organisms will use the same amino acid sequence in crucial proteins.
No.
I don't know. That's definitely not true. It holds that humans and bacteria is a mechanism. It is, well, okay, fine. I'm gonna go with D. Let's go with D.
Yeah.
It was correct. All right, good. Yay for us.
Yay.
What is the main assumption used by evolutionary biologists when building phylogenetic trees? Convergent evolution occurs frequently. Designers regularly reuse different parts in different designs. Similarity implies inheritance from a common ancestor. Evolutionary biologists make no assumptions. Okay, let's go with similarity implies inheritance.
Yes,
Even though
that's,
it's
that's
also
probably
not
the case.
necessarily true, but all right.
Yeah. But according to them, it's the case. Yeah, according to them.
A friend argues that universal common ancestry refutes intelligent design. Which response is most accurate? A. You are right. Intelligent design is not compatible with universal common ancestry. B. Since intelligent design only addresses how certain biological features arose and not whether organisms are related, universal common ancestry could be an option for an ID proponent. That's weird, but okay. Since intelligent design is compatible with microevolution, it is also compatible with universal common ancestry. Okay. There are neo-Darwinists that believe in intelligent design, so either view could be true. Wait, what was the question again? Argues that universal common ancestry refutes intelligent design. I guess I'll go with C. It's compatible with both. Nope, that's wrong. The answer is incorrect. Is it B?
Does it give the right answer? Or?
It does not. It does not give the correct answer.
Hmm.
I guess it's B. Intelligent design only addresses how certain biological features arose and not whether organisms are related. That's I don't buy that for even a second, but okay, if you say so.
I think this is like Michael B thing, right? Like, oh, like we can accept most of evolution. We just doubt certain parts of it, like the Michael B thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah, sort of. Phylogenetic trees are constructed on the basis of an organism's relative age from the fossil record. That's false.
That's false.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which of the following is an assumption underlying the construction of phylogenetic trees? Differences between organisms are the result of common design. The greater differences between two organisms, the more closely they're related. Similarity between organisms is the result of inheritance from a common ancestor. And organisms within phylogenetic trees are likely to retain few, if any, of the traits of their presumed ancestor due to random mutation and natural selection. No, okay, I'm going to go with C.
Yeah.
Huzzah, we got it right. Yay. Molecule-based trees and morphology-based trees often produce conflicting trees. That is false. Oh, they said it's incorrect. That's Jonathan Wells.
Yep. It's not. Of course, there are places where they have been in conflict
Sure.
before, but then
Right.
later evidence showed that oh no, they are actually compatible because we got, for example, the whales, like the whale fossil is a very famous example of we found new fossils, and thus the connection between whales and artiodactyls was supported by both genetics and morphology. Yeah, no, it's completely wrong. But even ignoring those, even if you just look at the morphological tree and the genetic tree, then there is a very significant overlap. Like the overlap is still far from what you would expect if there is no connection between the two, because statistics, right? Like if you only want a perfect one-to-one correlation, then of course it's probably not the case because it's a huge data set that you're dealing with, but still the overlap is significant between the two data sets.
I also want to read you guys some of the learning objectives for the like transitional fossil section because they're hilarious.
Oh.
Okay. I can describe Ida, which was Darwinius massillae, as a fossil promoted by discoverers as the link between humans and other animals, as well as subsequent evidence suggesting Ida was unrelated to human evolution. I mean, she's not related to human evolution. She's related to Strepsirrhine evolution. So you're kind of half right, I guess. 2, I can describe Tiktaalik as a fossil discovered in the Canadian Arctic, which has been called a transitional form between fish and tetrapods due to it supposedly being a fish with a wrist and its supposed placement in the fossil record between the fish ancestors of tetrapods and the first true tetrapods. Following that, I can provide evidence that challenges claims that Tiktaalik was a transitional form between fish and tetrapods by noting that it lacked wrists. It lacked wrists, had fish-like fins, very different from the skeletal structure of tetrapod limbs. That's wait, hold on a second. It had fins different from the structure of the limbs? No. What? Hold on. No.
Like
No.
Tiktaalik had a humerus, right?
Yes,
and
it
also,
had a.
yeah.
It did have a wrist. Yeah, it had a It
And
did
the
have
wristbones.
wrists. Yeah. What are you talking about?
Maybe not the specific articulation that modern tetrapods have, but it had those bones, the wrist bones, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it did. Okay,
Yeah.
and they're just saying it didn't have wrists at all. It says because it says later on there are 2 reasons why Tiktaalik is said to be a fulfilled prediction. Neil Shubin called the fossil a fish with a wrist. However, a closer inspection showed that it had fish-like fins, a very different skeletal structure from a tetrapod leg, and no wrist bones. What? No, it had wrists. You literally can look up Tiktaalik. Oops, wrong button. Tiktaalik skeleton. Images. Okay. Yes, it literally has. It has an ulna, radius, and humerus, and yeah, it has an ulna, radius, humerus, and it has a intermedium. Okay. I found it. Okay. So basically, they're just saying it's not close enough. Is what they're saying.
Yeah, it's
Even though it
like
has.
if I strictly define the term wrist, then it's not exactly that wrist. but it's
But also, you would have to say that.
It's
you
too
would also have to
transitional.
Yeah, but you would
Yeah.
also have to say Acanthostega and Ichthyostega also don't have wrists. So they're also just fish, I guess. By that definition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not intermediate because
They're
their
wrist-
wrists aren't really wrists. Yeah. Wait,
It's not wrist enough.
Isn't that
It's not
that
wrist enough.
by definition intermediate?
Yeah, it had
Because
as an ulna.
That's a radius on, and also the wrist region has more bones than, of course, the modern wrists in the tetrapods, but
Right.
still it still had like it also has an articulation there that acted in a wrist-like pattern too. So yeah,
No,
it could
it's
have
not
been-
wristy enough. It's not wristy enough.
It's not wristy.
Also,
wristy
they
enough.
say it that it was found after the Poland track, so it's not actually a morphological gap. Okay.
Also, yeah, also that's it.
Wah, wah, wah. Okay. It was. Oh my god, the Archaeopteryx one's even worse. Archaeopteryx is said to be an intermediate between theropods and birds. It was claimed to be intermediate because it has teeth, a bony tail, and winged claws. However, some living birds, like the Hoatzin, have wing claws. Are you serious? Really? Apparently, the Hoatzin has like unfused wing fingers too, I guess. No, wait, no, it doesn't. Oh, wait, but Archaeopteryx does? Huh, weird. Many species of extinct...
So there are many other birds who have fingernails too, like
the emu.
Yeah.
No one's saying that that Archaeopteryx is a bird, is a transition because it has wing claws. It has unfused wing fingers. The fingers are not fused into the single like structure that modern birds have.
Carpometacarpus, yeah.
Yeah. No, wrong. Sorry. I'd probably get your money back if I were you if you bought this. Many species of extinct birds known from the fossil record had teeth and/or bony tails. No crap, Sherlock. But this mix of traits does not necessarily mean they were descended from reptiles.
It's not transitional because other transitionals.
That's basically what they're saying. They're like,
yeah,
it had teeth and/or bony tails, but it doesn't mean they were descended from reptiles. Just it's not transitional because I say so is literally the argument. Perhaps such mosaics were designed to include a mix of specific traits. Okay. Who's throwing in the philosophy?
Yeah. So now they are saying like it's basically like, oh, okay, it's transitional, but it's still designed. Like I give up. I gave up.
Some
Yeah.
alleged Dino Fuzz. Some alleged feathered dinosaurs are covered in a down-like material, but it isn't feathers. Citation.
Oh no.
Citation.
I think it's the collagen thing, like Fiducia.
Which has gotten
it's collagen virus. Yeah.
He's gotten his butt absolutely kicked on that by like 100 different paleontologists at this point. So,
Yeah.
wah wah.
Again, like the Dapper dinosaur, like a few weeks ago, he was here.
Yeah.
He explained that, he explained that the Fiducia often cites the ichthyosaur fossil, which has these markings, and he says like, oh,
Right.
these markings are similar to collagen fibers, and people are saying like, no, those are like tool marks. You idiot.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, he also says feathers have a trunk, barbs, and barbules. Not necessarily. They don't necessarily have all
there are
those.
many different types of feathers. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of different types of feathers that don't all have those structures. There aren't even all, not even all modern feathers have a rachis, right?
Yes.
Like down feathers don't have a rachis, right? Or barbules or barbs. So no, that's wrong.
I think many paleonates also don't have like the asymmetrical pennate flight feather. Like they've lost those flight feathers, and it's mostly like fuzzy, hairy feathers.
Nestlig.
Yeah.
Okay, Nestlig, you're gonna keel over when you hear this one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Horses.
Oh, no.
Horses. Okay, here we go.
No.
When you hear this, you're gonna keel over. I can already feel it.
Okay.
Horse evolution is often cited in support of macroevolution, where textbooks show smaller four-toed creatures which grow larger and lose toes until the series ends with modern horses which have hooves. Okay, fair enough. But the horse body plan does not significantly evolve throughout the series.
All right. And what?
That
define significance for me.
Moreover, the supposed evolutionary series is artificial and imaginary.
That
In
means
the actual fossil record, some of the earlier horses are larger than later ones, and fossils portrayed in the supposed lineage span different continents.
this
Because
doesn't even do
evolution
anything
only occurs.
this doesn't even do anything for
Because
the
evolution only
intelligent
occurs in one
design
place.
proposition. Because what?
I don't
Did
even-
the designer design different horses because reasons?
I don't even know what this argument is. Like it both sounds like they're saying horse evolution is fine because it doesn't matter, but also horse evolution isn't real. Like they're trying to do both at the same time. So which is it? Is it that horses did evolve from smaller four-toed creatures and that's fine? It's like they're like it's not a big difference. Or is it the case that they didn't actually evolve? Which is it? Which is the case? You can't have it both ways. It can't be fine, not matter, or doesn't matter, but it didn't happen.
See, that's where you're wrong.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Intelligent design proponents can have it multiple. It always works.
You know what, Peter?
No.
Peter, we need to just do this course.
Yeah,
We should do this course for the next video.
Yeah, shoot me the link and I'll pull it up on screen and we can.
You have to make an account, I think. I think you have to make an account.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
No,
yeah,
also
and
the-
this one's
also the-
free, so it's fine. Yeah.
And if it's
Yeah.
only
And also
for
the thing
US
about
people, then I still have a VPN, so I can.
all right. But also the thing about some larger horses are older than smaller. Of course, it's not orthogenic. It's never been orthogenic. Well, although
Right.
I know that the early paleontologists were like into the orthogenic camp very often, but
Mhm,
that
right.
hasn't been the case. That hasn't been the case for many decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's bonkers. This is just bonkers.
Yeah.
So that's why you want
Yeah,
to do
no,
it for the next show.
I think we We should do this. We should go through this for like the next, unless we find something else fun to talk about. We should just do this.
It beats
This is gonna
it
this
beats
can keep us
Eric Hovind.
entertained for a little while.
In all fairness,
really does.
It beats Eric Hovind.
How
It really
how,
does.
how long is the lectures or the course
So
material?
there's also a video. There's an introduction section also.
And is everything free or only a
Yeah,
few
no,
parts of it?
So the whole lesson is free. The whole
Alright.
discovering intelligent design lesson is free, and it's 6 sections. Academic freedom. Are they still whining about that? Oh my god, get over yourselves. Okay. The author is Casey Luskin. Of course it is. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, this is so bad. Okay. Yeah, no, we should definitely do this. This is gonna be fun. Yeah, okay. There's some other stuff like about there's some other stuff about cosmic design. I don't care about that. I don't know anything about astronomy. Oh, they got stuff about
Stars can't collapse because ideal gas law. Something.
right. Yeah, no, exactly. They got some stuff on like cell stuff. Yeah, we could do that. We could talk about that. That'd be fun. So basically sections 3 through 5.
Stars can't be billions of years old because they would have burned out by burning oxygen and carbon because they are on fire.
Actually,
yeah.
You know what? I'm curious now. I do kind of want to see what they say for that section. I'm curious now. Okay, basically sections 3 and 4 are like the meat of biology stuff. No, stop it. Stop playing. Cosmic design. Oh no, okay. It's all
Big Bang probably.
Big Bang, yeah, but also what's the word for it? Anthropic principle. There you go. Thanks, RJ. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
like, isn't the universe so finely
Fine-tuning.
for life? Yeah, that's all it is. Okay. Boring.
Yet most of the universe is completely uninhabitable for us.
No, shh, don't worry about it. Okay, I'm gonna save this.
The vast majority is most of it is too cold, and the small portion that is not too cold is too hot, and that's 99.999% of it.
Stop using facts and logic and evidence. Okay. All right. Well, we're past the hour. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Peter, for hosting. As always, we wouldn't be here without you. And thank you, Nestle, for being here and joining with me.
All right.
We will see all of you next week when we dive into Discovery University.
And we go to university.
Yeah, we go to university.
Yeah,
yeah, but a bad one. So, all right, bye everybody.
Let's have the title. Let's have the title of the video. We enroll to Discovery U.
That's actually a good idea. Okay, I'll do that. All right, bye everybody.
Okay. Bye everyone.
It's so bad. This stuff is so bad.
Perhaps we can age the material.
You get a polished turd is what you get.
You're getting the title of Dr. Dino. Yay. Finally, we have the same title.
You know what? We should totally do that. We should be like, we also have a doctorate.
A doctorate in truthology Peter, do you know that one Simpsons episode with the about evolution